Welcome, everyone, to an all new episode of Talking The Last of Us. We are moving right along to episode 3. We just discussed episode 1 and 2.
They're so
And
big.
let me tell you, episode 3 is a real tearjerker. So we are definitely going to get into this. But let's recap just a little bit about where we are. We know that Joel and Tess and Ellie embarked off of the Fedra reservation, as it were, out of Fedra jurisdiction, and they're off to give Ellie over to the Fireflies out west. We met the cordyceps.
Yes.
We sort of understand. Tori, mute your
No.
mic. Tori, Tori. Oh wait, Tori, mute your mic. There you go. Okay.
I'm so
We
sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought it was muted. Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
it's okay.
My bad.
We know that Joel and we know that Tess are very committed to going to find Joel's brother Tommy out west as well. We have a whole lot of things going on with the world that post-apocalypse is definitely falling apart much faster than I thought actually that it would. 20 years without people in it has really left the world in ruin. I want to introduce my cast here, my guests, but I also want to let you know that on this particular podcast, we are definitely going to talk spoilers for the series. So if you haven't seen the episodes that we're talking about, definitely this might not be the time. Log off after you've seen it, come back. And we are going to talk a little bit about how things differ from the game. So if you haven't played the game, but you're thinking about it, we're going to have a little bit of spoilers for that too. I also want to say that during the first and the second episodes of The Last of Us, we got a really good, I think, view of how the show wants to honor the game. And they do so in a number of different ways, both from the points of view shots that we have that just come straight from the game, and also some of the really interesting, I would say, sound mixing ideas that kind of come around. Episode 1 was just pitch perfect for that. Episode 2 kind of walks us a little bit further into the immersiveness of the world, what the cordyceps are, how they work, that they have a hive mind. That is super interesting. How scary they can be, and how fast they can be, and how no one is really assured a guaranteed spot on this show. It's pretty scary. We saw that Tess died in a way that she sacrificed herself, asked Joel to get Ellie out west, and we know that Ellie may have the secret in her blood to ending the apocalypse. Well, at least ending the cordyceps problem. Um, there's some interesting ideas going on here. So, without further ado, let me introduce my cast, and then we are going to talk about episode 3, which is a definite departure from the game. So, everything is kind of new and wonderful and shiny, and also horribly sad. And yes, we'll get into all of that. Let me introduce Kinte first. Kinte, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good, just trying to survive here in up during the apocalypse.
So, you're very much the Joel character.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you ready to talk about Frank and Bill?
Oh yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. I was
Okay,
born ready.
I'm gonna ask you an out of the gate question after I introduce Tori. So be ready for a hard one here.
Okay.
Tori, how are you tonight?
I'm fantastic. I'm really mellow. I'm really, you know what I mean? Like I'm in a good mood.
Good.
Um I'm also really excited about talking about this. I like this show. I do, and I wish that I played the video game. So maybe I should go play the video game.
The video games are amazing, excellent, and anyone who has ever played either The Last of Us 1 or 2, and most people haven't played 2 without playing 1, leave that experience changed people, and for really good reason. It was one of the most exceptional titles that I have seen in I don't even know how long. It just absolutely hits everybody to the
Yeah,
core.
it really speaks to you like personally. Like
Yep.
it's like a very relatable. You know what I mean? Like you this could really happen. Like
Although I will say that I'm really glad that in the game there are the choices that you make. I'm also really glad that in the series there is a lot less crouching than in the game. So good for them that they didn't
Uh-huh.
add so much of that. Okay, Kinte, I'm going to ask you a question right off the top here, and forgive me if this is kind of hard right off the top, but
Okay.
as an overall feel, and without jumping too far ahead, give me a 1 to 10 on how you felt this episode 3, did in terms of conveying a sense of world building for The Last of Us.
Oh, it's 10. This is uh this is one of the better episodes of television in a long time. It was excellent. Um and it felt monumental when you're watching it. I mean, I saw it obviously when it aired, so it was before the hype. I'm glad I saw it before the hype,
Right.
you know, so I felt that way before I heard anybody else say it. Um it was just it was phenomenal. It was at first I was like, "Oh, okay. Is it they're just going to do like a bunch of flashbacks?" Like at first I thought that maybe that's where it was going, and then when you realize what was, what was ahead, it was just excellent in many ways.
So I'm going to interject a small thing before I ask Tori the same question. But one of the things that I actually read, which is just so stunning to me, is that somehow this particular episode was trying to be sort of the show's prestige TV episode, that this was the episode that was like fishing for an award or something. I actually really disagree, and I'll tell you why. Although it's award worthy and it is definitely in that in the realm of what people classify as prestige TV. But for anybody who doesn't know, on every other podcast that I've ever done, I have railed against the whole term prestige TV. I hate it so much. But okay, let's put that aside for a second. This episode absolutely narrates, without talking about Joel and Ellie, exactly the feel that the whole rest of the game with Joel and Ellie is. It sets up everything that is going to happen in the game and thereby the series perfectly. And we'll get into why in 1 second. Tori, tell me, what did you think about this episode altogether? What 1 to 10, what was your feel for it?
yeah, 10. It was so great. Like I saw it before all the hype too, and it kind of made me feel like when everybody else saw it, and they're like, "Oh my god!" It kind of made me feel like
Looking
when,
private chat, Jen. Sorry.
um, I really thought that like, oh god, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, kids. um,
Well, tell me, Tori, tell me what did you like about this episode specifically? What particular piece did you find to be the most compelling? Was it the love story, or was it something else? Was it something else that had to do with world building?
I want to say that I was more interested in how the virus started and how it spread and the how the infected were and how they were being dealt with the government. Like I liked that aspect of it only because the love story, man, love stories you get your heart broken all the time. You're like
Well,
you love somebody and then they die and you're like
well,
god.
okay, so I do okay, so taking a quick pause here, I do think that this is exactly the point of episode 3. The show is called, or the show's title is Long Long Time, and that is a reference to the song by Linda Ronstadt, Long Long Time. And just sort of a little extra detail, apparently Linda Ronstadt's music has gone to the top of the charts on Spotify and many other music list services. It's amazing. And if you haven't heard Linda Ronstadt's music, it's actually really good anyway, just by itself. But every time I now hear this song, I literally want to cry. So let me give you sort of just the quick recap of the episode, and then we can sort of dive into it. We find Bill, who is a character in the game, by the way, and he is basically the outbreak happens, and he goes to Home Depot and a number of different places to gather his supplies.
That's the smart. He should have already had the supplies, but
Well,
that's
he
another smart
nobody
move.
knew that the zombie apocalypse was going to happen, but he is
Oh,
definitely a prepper. He
yeah.
has
Okay.
spent a lot of time in his life, well, I would just say being very prepared for things. His arsenal of guns is absolutely astounding. And that was
I
just
loved it.
that blew me away. But he knows what to do, and that's the thing. He understands that in order to survive, he's going to have to really wall off a section for himself of the world. And he does so by building these large fences and then creating these traps. And the traps are truly ingenious. He has an electrified fence, he has flamethrowers, he has pits where people can basically fall into if they're not paying attention. And it appears to serve him pretty well because we get a time jump, and after that time jump, we see that Bill has actually caught someone in his hole.
Yeah.
And the person that he catches in there is Frank. Now, when we first are introduced to Frank, I don't feel like we are supposed to know specifically anything about him other than he is trying to get to a federal location. I feel like this sort of shows us that there are still a lot of uninfected out there that are kind of wandering aimlessly and they don't know where to go, or they've heard that there are places to go, and they're still searching for the right place for them. This is one of those sort of murky details which maybe in the scheme of things now doesn't seem to make a whole lot of difference, but eventually as we start to travel across the country, it does kind of matter, because you sort of understand how people become more cliquish and join groups and then stick together that way if they're not under federal quarantine, or if they're not sort of involved in one location or other. And throughout The Last of Us, this is definitely a key metric. People want to group together. People want companionship. People want the stability of being with other people. And that is no different, really, for Bill, except Bill is on his own. As a survivalist, he has not had anyone else with him for a really long time. And so he meets Frank. Frank convinces him to feed him, let him take a shower. Who knows how long it's been since Frank has taken a shower, and sort of experience some comforts, including playing the piano, a bunch of things, right?
Okay, one thing I want to point out, it's just a detail that's bothering me. How do people take showers or anything in the apocalypse? Do they have a direct line to the electric? You know what I mean? Like plumbing,
Bill
like
has
what?
generators. Bill has
Okay.
generators,
Okay.
and yeah, and that's kind of a big part of the episode. We really go through and learn
Oh, you know
a
what I forgot
lot
about? Yeah, I think I
about.
I missed that part because I was like, how is they? I didn't understand how they were
Bill's
taking
a
showers.
survivalist, and
Right.
he has definitely given this much thought. So he very clearly has created systems for himself that include just everything that he needs to survive. Bill is a
Right.
prepper without any. Yeah, there's no question that he's really good at what he does. So the episode continues to move on, and as the episode moves on, we have a strong understanding of the relationship that's beginning to form between Bill and Frank. Um, they establish themselves as a couple, and it feels very endearing, but unlikely. Like, just wow, what an odd couple to have together. And at the same time, it also feels like this is the most natural thing in the world. And again, I'm just giving an overview. We're going to talk a little bit more in depth about all these things in 1 second. Um, there is a scene in the middle of our episode where not rebels, I'm sorry, raiders try to invade the area that Bill and Frank have walled off for themselves, and it doesn't go very well. But Bill ends up being shot, and at that point it does feel like, oh, maybe this is the end for Bill. And we just saw Tess die in the last episode, so it doesn't feel like it's that far off. But just as we think that Bill is going to die, we get another time jump and we see Frank and Bill together. Older Frank has clearly had some health issues, and Bill is now in the role of being Frank's caregiver. It's absolutely endearing. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. And then I'm going to save the ending of this episode for what we're going to talk about sort of as we go. But basically, the gist of this episode is this relationship between Bill and Frank and what is happening both to them and the world outside. Because one of the important aspects of this episode is they meet Joel and Tess, and what that kind of means both for Joel as he is now on his way to meet Bill, and also what has sort of happened during all of the time that the apocalypse has been going on. So let's get into all of that. Um, so one quick thing is, Kente, do you remember in episode 1 when the radio was going off and Joel was talking about the codes? Are you back, Kente?
Yeah, I remember that.
There we go. Okay. Uh, and do you remember what the codes were?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, so the codes in for the radio on The Last of Us were an interesting little segue into episode 3, where he said if there's that basically there's like a series of events that can happen when you hear these different radio codes. And during episode 3, we kind of get another shout out to that, because you hear what it is that Frank kind of comes up with whimsically to say, okay, if you hear this, then you'll know it means this. And I thought that that was just so super awesome. I really liked that little touch. It was just such an excellent touch. um the I wanted to go through just real quickly that the songs that were in, I think it's this, I think he said in the songs in the 70s. um well, you know what? I'm gonna stop, because I'm gonna actually say what some of this stuff is in a little bit. Let me ask Kinte, just in terms of how you thought about the relationship between Bill and Frank began with Frank meeting Bill. Did you think that that was actually going to turn into something, or what were your thoughts immediately?
I kind of thought they were going towards him being some kind of plant or some sort of enemy, all the way up until when he was playing the piano. I was sitting there thinking maybe he was going to attack him. Obviously I
Yeah,
didn't know about Bill and Frank in the game, so I wasn't quite sure. And then I started getting hookup vibes,
right,
and then it
right.
turned out to be what it turned out to be.
So he sings, Bill actually sings the song that ends up being the sort of super important song at the end on the piano at the in that moment. And man, that I don't know why that was so haunting, but God, that was haunting. I really liked that. I thought it was great. This is the second time in 2 episodes that a piano seems to be important to us.
Hmm.
Remember in the second episode, there was also a piano in that flooded out area.
But that's right, huh?
Yeah, I half expected the frog to be playing the piano, but no, it didn't. Um, okay. Uh, to, okay, let me ask this question sort of as a follow-up question to that. Once you realized that Bill and Frank were actually a couple, tell me what you thought about how they were experiencing everything that was happening in terms of what the apocalypse was, and how it like both seriously affected them and seriously didn't affect them.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I would say that it was interesting because based on other programs and movies we've seen, no one seems to have a good long run in one place without disaster happening. And to be honest with you, if you think about it, he had a really good run. Bill did, because
Absolutely.
it was only like the one real incident. At least that's the one they showed us, and he was able to live virtually in peace with Frank, and before Frank came for such a long time, to the fact where they were able to plant strawberries and you know
Right.
right, you
Right.
know. So and strawberries are not easy to plant. Like you gotta do it
Oh
special.
no, we're growing strawberries right now, and
uh,
they take a long time to grow.
yeah.
They're like,
And and also the idea that those strawberry seeds actually came from a trade that Frank made with Tess
Right.
is kind of important, right? That is, it kind of gives you the level of what Frank saw as being important. He wasn't just like trading, oh, here's some knives or something that might be really. No, he was asking for strawberry seeds.
Hmm.
And they were strawberry seeds to have strawberries with Bill. Like that's what he was finding to be important in the at the end of the world. That, I don't know,
Yeah.
there was something really poignant about that to me.
And the two actors that played in this episode, Bill and Frank, first of all, perfectly cast, and they were phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And very unlikely in these roles. I
Yeah,
mean, I would not have expected this caliber of performance out of a comedian. I mean, not in this
no,
role.
I kind of he's kind of played characters similar. I feel
Yeah.
like, but in a comedic way. But I'm not surprised that he was. Yeah, he's a fantastic actor. He's probably underrated.
I'm, oh, definitely underrated. I completely agree with that. In the interim scene
His
when.
wife, Megan Mullally, uh, was the one that convinced him to do it, because she read the script and she said, "You're getting your butt on a plane to I think they shoot in Calgary." Uh,
Mhm.
he read the script and said, "You got to do this."
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I heard him say
Um
in the interview.
uh Nick Offerman is
Nick
one of
Offerman,
those.
sorry.
Yeah, he's
He,
he's definitely one of those. He's definitely one of those. He's, I don't know how to describe it. Full of surprises. I guess that's maybe the best way to say it. Just full of surprises.
very
I
similar to
I,
Tori.
I was very I was very convinced that these two were an actual couple. I mean, even the part about them arguing in in the middle of the episode about something so trivial as mowing the lawns. No, we don't have enough gas, and Frank being, yes, we absolutely, this is about me. This is about what I want to do. This is like, it just felt so organically real. Like, yeah, this is what couples argue about, without it being overly dramatic and overly contentious, which is in such stark contrast to what clearly is going on around them. I absolutely thought that that was amazing. Tori, give me your opinion of what you thought Bill and Frank sort of represented, in terms of how you, like, what you thought about them together as a couple, and how you felt that relationship kind of built up and ultimately culminated in.
right. I loved it. You know, whenever Frank was first caught, I thought he was gonna kill him. Like I thought he was gonna kill him. He caught him in the hole. And then Frank convinces him, and I'm probably thinking, Bill's thinking in his head, man, this guy's attractive. I don't really want to kill him. So he doesn't kill him. And then, of course, they hook up, because that's what you do when you're in the middle of nowhere in a zombie apocalypse. That's what you do. I don't know.
I I thought it was really interesting that that Frank knew, had enough uh peace of mind, enough cool to be able to humanize himself in front of Bill and
Right.
say, who he was, where he was from. the fact that he had plans, and he wasn't a nothing. In other words, like, make Bill see him as a person instead of making him see just be another person caught in one of Bill's traps, because you can
Right,
clearly tell that Bill is, this isn't Bill's first rodeo. I
right.
mean, he's not just a skilled inventor, he is absolutely the I'm if I'm going to survive, I can't trust anyone. And it's so clear that that is
One
how he feels.
one thing that like got me is like the argument with the lawn.
Hmm.
It felt like organic. That's what couples do. But it felt like Bill was a little delusional. Do you know what I mean? Like they were being delusional. They're in their nice happy place, and they have their lawn mowers, and that's their biggest problem right now, right?
Well, this is another sort of central theme, I think, as much as possible, because as you get further and further into the game, it becomes harder and harder to make this make sense. But for right now, what we had was two people trying to be as normal as possible, live a normal existence. And part of living a normal existence, and we see this in quite a few other places in this episode, is understanding and enjoying the simple pleasures of art, of growing things, of being present in the moment, and not thinking about the terrors of the world that are outside. That feels like, again, a really strong and overarching theme to The Last of Us, as just this is exactly what it's about. You have to find the small spaces in the world to exist and find some amount of happiness, or you won't survive.
Right.
Um and
You
this is
have to
also what
you have to
Go ahead.
find your you have to find your own peace.
Yep.
Whoever
Yeah.
you worship, whatever you do, you have to calm yourself down in this situation because your body's going to freak out and your mind's going to shut down and you're not going to
And
know what to do.
Bill and Frank definitely give that to each other.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit. Kente, give me your assessment about why you thought that this episode was so good. Because obviously there's a lot of things in here. There are, Joel and Tess come to visit Bill and Frank, and they strike up a friendship. Clearly, Frank really wants to be with other people, and when I say be with other people, I mean he wants to entertain, he wants to engage in social dialogue, and he really does hit it off with Tess. Bill and Joel are definitely two sides of the same coin, and for that they do not trust each other. They just, and Joel even says, look, I get it, I understand, but you're going to need us, so let's just dispense with the, who's the bigger man, and put the gun away, and let's, really get down to brass tacks. I loved that, but I don't feel like that was, even though that was a central point to the episode to introduce us so that we know that Joel has already met Bill, and it gives Joel the incentive to go see Bill. Um I don't feel like that was the whole point of this episode. And I'm just wondering, as someone who hasn't played the game, what you thought about what the point of this episode was.
I believe that the point of this episode was to establish um, to the audience what the cost of living is, what it's like to have your own piece of sunshine in, in the dark times. And I think it was important to show the whole through line of these characters. Um, the way that Bill is portrayed in the video game is really cool. But it's vastly different, and I think it works great for the video game. And what they did in this was was better for the. This is one of those situations where they made the appropriate change, and by showing this through line of the whole Bill situation, it really shows that. I think it tells the audience like what is most important: is surviving. Is it surviving or living? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
before Frank, he was surviving, but when Frank came into his life, he began to live. And he was,
Exactly. And
was looking
and I
after.
I definitely think that the other through line here is has to do with found family. It has to do with there is always the option in this world to find someone that you can care about. And sometimes the consequences to finding someone that you care about are dire. I mean, it leads to dire choices yourself. And that, I think, is the core of this episode. The core of this episode boils down to the entire episode happens and it's glorious. I mean, it's really a beautiful episode. The fact that two people could care about each other on this level at this time under this amount of duress and stress is absolutely astounding. But it comes down to the end of the episode where we see that Frank has made a choice that he does not want to go on living. And I I mean, first of all, that's a hard choice even no matter how you slice it up. It's a hard choice. But he's made this choice and he tells Bill, I need for you to buy into this. I need you to understand that this is my choice. I want to leave on my own terms. And that does feel very incredibly powerful and profound. Um and the fact that Bill goes along with it also feels like okay, that can't be easy. And they spend a wonderful day together. I mean, I can't even begin to explain how fabulous the storytelling is on that account. But by the time that we realize, let me back up for 1 second. In the game, we only see Frank as a corpse. We never see Frank. So we have no idea really what Frank's character, so to speak, is like. This episode gives us a fully uh, everything. A I'm struggling with the word to say about what this sort of does because it's more than just character exposition. It's more than just background. It's something like Frank has taken a spot in the series that he didn't have in the game, but what an amazing addition to the Last of Us lore to have this as who Frank was. Bill, we have a better idea of who Bill is. There's conversations, there's Joel giving us some information, there's we know that there's smuggling going back and forth. It's a big thing. But as far as we know in the game, Bill is still alive. So that's a little bit different. But here we have Frank who ultimately meets his demise at his own hand. And then we have this choice by Bill. And I'm going to go back to you again, Kinte, and tell me what you thought about that. And did you get like any hint early that that's what he was going to choose? I mean, like I'm struck between, and sometimes I have a hard time with this particular episode because, of course, I want to keep talking about what it is that makes The Last of Us The Last of Us. But I also feel like this particular episode was just so good as a standalone piece of art that it's sometimes hard for me not to want to just call out the filmmaking and storytelling for what it was. It was so incredibly hefty in every single aspect. And I'm not sure how you felt, but when you saw that that was what Bill's choice was, how did you feel about it, or what were you thinking? And did you have any idea that that's what he was going to choose?
Yeah, I felt like that he was going to go with him because he gave him everything that was worth to live for. So without Frank, I mean, what was he going to be like without him?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was, I mean, can you picture it? Let's say he didn't go with him, he'd eventually killed himself.
But see if you played the game and you only saw Frank's corpse, you never would have guessed that Bill was going to kill himself.
Well, no, I mean that's yeah, but I didn't. So I'm only
Yeah,
going off. I saw that later. I
right,
watched it right after, and all you see is him. He had Frank then hung himself
right.
because I believe it was because he was bit, right?
Yeah,
That's why he ended up hanging himself. But and it's actually the way it is too. It's not like sad or anything. It's kind of like I don't want to say it's played for laughs. It's just kind of like you just see him hanging there, and you're just like, I don't know.
It
It's
it
definitely not.
it
It's not. It's not.
it's incidental to the
Right.
story. It's important, but it's incidental. It
But that was
doesn't.
my partner. That was my partner.
Yeah, yeah. It's not like you have to delve into it in order to understand Bill at all. It's just sort of there, and that's why I'm saying that this was such a huge addition to the lore that really helped to flesh it out. I mean, it really was like I don't know how I can look at The Last of Us the same with Bill in it and not be thinking about this story.
Right.
Um, you, it's just like okay, well, this is how Frank was. This is exactly what it was. Um, it actually makes The Last of Us the game even more sad if you think that Bill is still alive and that's actually what really happened. That Frank decided to commit suicide and that they had had that kind of relationship as they it makes it really sad. Um, okay. I want to sort of go backwards just a tiny bit, and specifically, I want to address this to Kinte again. How did you feel about Joel and Tess and Frank and Bill meeting on that day, that beautiful sunny day when they were sitting on the lawn? Because for me, it almost felt sublime. Like, let's have a tea party in the garden and it's the apocalypse. I mean, like, it almost felt like, wow, this is really breathtaking. What did
No,
you think?
I thought that was cool, and it was cool to see Tess again. You
Hmm.
know, like, and I wonder if we'll see her more as it goes on. But I thought that was really cool because the way I was kind of glad that if that's the last that we see of Tess, it's better than the last that we saw of her in the previous episode. To
That's a
see
good
her
point.
in a better situation. But I thought that was excellent. I thought it was good, and I love how they ran off and then they just left you know um Joel and Bill the chat. And I like
Hmm.
I like when he tells Joel tells him, don't point the gun
Yeah,
at me.
don't point
Yeah.
that gun at me. that that's what I was saying before about hey, put the gun away and let's actually talk
Yeah.
because this isn't going to work. And I feel like part of that is just that Joel recognizes in Bill this kind of like kinship. Yeah, I know what you're about. I'm there myself, man. You're not going to pull any punches on me.
Right.
I just in terms of how this set up what you think life is like for most people in the apocalypse. Clearly, we aren't supposed to believe that this is the way that it is for most people. And I would like to just, briefly mention that in the beginning of this episode, Joel and Ellie are on the road and they see in the ditch people that Fedra killed because either there wasn't enough room where they were going or something else happened. It seems to me that Joel is saying there probably wasn't enough room and that's why everybody, was shot. But everybody that's in the ditch is they're the people that we see getting loaded on the truck at the very beginning of the
Yeah.
episode, right? Um I would just like to mention that while this episode is definitely a slice of heavenly life where Bill and Frank have built this fortress, or well, Bill built this fortress to exist in. Um, this is definitely not typical of anything else that's really in the Walking Dead, in the in the Last of Us, um, in the sense that until we start moving a bit forward, creature comforts are not really part of this world. So to see the creature comforts that they have here is kind of a big deal. And I just kind of want to mention that because I actually had a talk with some people who hadn't played the game at all and said, well, if Bill and Frank have built this, then maybe lots of other people have built something just like it. And I feel like that's kind of, I mean, it's nice, it's a good idea, but that fantasy doesn't really play itself out because Bill's really special. Bill is an inventor. Bill is absolutely a prepper. He 100% had
Well,
everything that he needed to have in order to make this space work. And on top of it, Bill had Joel to do a lot of his, smuggling back and forth.
but
And
but but also in the video game, Bill's where Bill lives is horrifying in
it
comparison.
is,
It's
yeah,
like it's
it
not
is.
like there. It's like a walk in the park. It's like la di da di da.
It's a
In the
little garden
video game,
utopia.
it's like they're all over the place. Those monsters are all over the place. So he doesn't have like he can't just walk around eating strawberries
Yep.
in the
He
video
he
game. you know.
yeah, he de- Bill set himself up a fortress that is horrifying. I mean, it's really
Right.
bad. And they try to sort of like give a shout out to it by showing us the traps that Bill built, but it really doesn't do it justice
Right.
because it's
No.
bad. It's just
Yeah.
really bad.
Because as soon as that episode was off, I wanted to see, and then when I saw the whole Bill and Frank saga, and
Mhm.
I was like, oh, this ain't like the TV
Uh
show. Like,
nope.
I
Nope.
was like, yeah, because he's like they're barely getting killed, or almost getting killed. And the funny scene where they're pushing the in the
The
game they're
truck.
pushing the truck, and
Right.
yeah, it's pretty funny. Yeah,
And the fact that Bill still hasn't like buried Frank is like okay. Like
yeah.
you think I'm no shade being thrown to the game, but yeah, that really bothers me. Like, look, take 10 minutes and we'll all sit by and we'll just have like a tiny little funeral for Frank, thanks. One small ritual in the apocalypse that I'm totally down for. Um
See,
okay.
that's something Tori would do. She wouldn't bury. She just go move on.
eh,
She ain't burying nobody.
Oh my gosh. I'm very sentimental actually. I'm very
Yeah.
sentimental.
No sign of the cross, nothing. She's just like, let's move
Yeah,
on.
I was raised Catholic. My great aunt was a nun, so I went to a convent whenever I was 15 because I was bad. So I
Oh
know
no.
all about so I know all about religion and
G- Tori, what did you think about
Okay,
the
mother Tori.
Raiders?
Okay, mother Tori.
Mother
huh?
Tori. Tori, what did you think about those raiders that attacked the fortress when attacked the little mini oasis of Frank and Bill's?
Yeah.
What did you think? See, part of me was like, and again, this is not game lore. We're just talking series. Part of me was like, probably the reason that they continued to survive there is because after that first raid, I guarantee anybody who wanted to attack that place was having some serious second thoughts because the number of people, first of all, that died in that raid were it's that was astounding, and number two, the horrible way that they died. I
Yeah.
mean, I can't imagine that anybody's going, oh yeah, let's go raid this place because no wonder they survived for so long.
Probably, word got out. Leave those people the hell alone. I thought I was rooting for Bill. Like I was like, "Oh my god, come on, that's a fortress." And he really did not disappoint. I will tell you what. Like all, all those raiders died. I thought it was like I want to say one thing about how I feel about the game, like well, not the game, the show. Whenever it's like Alexandria in The Walking Dead, like all the houses are nice. You know what I mean? Like all the houses are nice. And now they have this oasis in this series. I feel like it's like the same thing. They feel safe there. They feel, that's their home. They're defending their home right now. That's what I felt like.
Right, right. And that actually I think is also another pretty key aspect, and this is one of the reasons I keep saying that I feel like this particular episode is sort of um an altogether mash of all the things that are important in The Last of Us in one episode. The idea that home is so important is a huge it plays a big part in sort of what you consider to be safety and what you don't consider to be safety, how you view what safety really is, and then also this idea of just because something looks safe does not mean that it is safe.
Right.
That is also an enormous part of the game. Things that look safe are not safe. And, let's not forget, the game is meant to be it's a game. It's not I mean,
Mhm.
yes, it's got a huge story attached to it, but it's a video game. So your ability to do things in the game is very much game metrics, right? Can you shoot? Can you crouch? Can you hide? Can you sneak? Can you figure things out? Like, these are the important parts of the game itself. When we are watching the series, we're kind of getting a piece of both together, and that, I think, is sometimes both frustrating and also relieving. Like, to me, it's actually less stressful to watch the series, even though it's awesome and I realize that a lot of, crazy stuff is about to happen. It's so much less stressful because I'm I'm not feeling like I'm under such duress in every moment that's going on. Just sort of as we kind of close this episode out, I want to obviously talk a bit about how Joel and Ellie end up at Bill's house and then what happens. So, um, Kinte, tell us what happens when I'm sorry, tell us what happens when Joel and Ellie end up at Bill and Frank's house.
Oh, they go in and he knows the gate code, and they go in and to the main house, and what happens is uh, the the note is left behind that Bill leaves to Joel, saying that that he is if you're reading this, he's deceased, and to don't go into the bedroom because it's probably going to be a bad smell, even though we left the window open, and
Right,
and that's when they are. He tells them everything that's there is his, and to take care of Tess because obviously he didn't know that Tess was deceased,
right.
and they don't go crazy. They just take what they need, and and then they move on and drive off. So yeah, it's
And
pretty.
then
Yeah.
the thing that always sort of gets me about this particular episode, in both in relation to the game but just in series progression, is here's the thing that Joel has been trying to find for so long, which is the car battery, and he figures out how to get everything that he needs for the car battery. And there is this moment when they're sort of gathering everything together, and let's not leave out that Joel gives Ellie the kind of thumbs down about grabbing a gun, but in the
Mhm.
end Ellie gets a gun anyway
Right.
because that ends up being important. But let's not, let's not forget that Joel, when he's like pulling everything together, he doesn't take the whole arsenal, right? He
Right.
takes what he needs. Yeah, and that definitely feels like something that that the apocalypse survivor would do. You only take what you need because anything else will just weigh you down, right?
They talk about it in the forums, right? Like that's what they talk about is what they need to do in a zombie apocalypse. Like these people take it seriously.
And you can't weigh yourself down with so much stuff that you then can't be functional with it.
Right.
You have to be functional with the stuff that you have. That's what I feel like we definitely get from Joel's ability to plan and be ready for whatever is going to happen next. um so the closing shot of this episode is through the window of Bill and Frank's bedroom. And we know what's in there. It's Bill and Frank. They're dead. We never see their bodies, thank goodness. I For a moment I thought they were going to show them to us, and I'm beyond grateful that they didn't, because that's not the way that I feel like we're supposed to remember Bill and Frank. We're supposed to remember them as the almost star-crossed lovers, people that met each other at a time when the world was upside down and somehow managed to make true love work. I mean, it's just it really it's really important. It just it hits me so hard. But the key point, well, not the key point, but a key point is the open window is actually a title screen in The Last of Us. That it's a direct shout out to the game itself. Um, I really loved that the flowers were dying, not because it's the end of hope, but because it's just the end of Bill's story. Bill is the one that kept the flowers going. And because Bill is not there, the flowers aren't there. I don't know. There was just something so special and poignant about it that it made me feel like someone's really loved this source material and was able to communicate that by putting this all together. It just really it felt so honoring to the material. And through the bedroom window, we also see Ellie and Joel in the truck leaving, and that again is like, okay, they're leaving everything again in order to make progress. I absolutely felt like it was just intensely poignant. Um,
Oh, and Frank was played by Murray Bartlett. I
Bless
forgot.
you.
right, right. Who is an award-winning actor by himself, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
he
he's
won the
won.
Emmy for White Lotus.
Right. I mean, he's really good. He's always been good in sort of everything. Um,
Reminds me of myself.
so give me your final take on this episode, Kinte. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about? And is there anything important that you feel like we may have missed?
No, no, I thought we did a great job reviewing this episode. The episode was fantastic, and I, uh, well, I don't want to say nothing about the next one because we're gonna cover that. But there was some talk about. I knew that it's such a high bar that the next episode wasn't going to get as much love, just because and but I that's really good that you can get to this height you know, um, of a series. So hopefully this ain't the high point, and then everything else is, low. But I thought this was a great episode, and I'm looking forward to getting to the next one.
And what about you, Tori? Is there anything that you feel like we missed, or is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about?
No, everything was covered. Like you go, girl. You can you can review an episode really well. I think the episode was so fantastic, and it is going to be hard to come after that. And that's what she said. Sorry,
Oh wow!
sorry.
But I'm pumped.
Anyway, so I think that we reviewed every angle that I wanted to review, and I didn't even know. Well, I read your notes, but I didn't know that we were going to be on the same page on that, and that's cool. And I really like the that they made them homosexual.
Yeah, well, since they're two guys, there really wasn't any other way to make them. So yeah.
Right,
Um,
but I'm saying like that made it like to me like more comforting.
mm,
Really? Well, why couldn't they? I mean, what if they were just two male friends?
I mean, that's cool too, but I just feel like it's something special. Like, oh, they
Really?
found each other in the apocalypse. Like,
it establishes love. The thing is, it establishes love. It
yeah,
and it's not that they're homosexual that establishes the love. It's everything else in the episode that establishes the love. It's the care that Frank gives Bill when Bill is shot. It's the care that Bill gives Frank when Frank
right.
is aging and having a difficult time. It is the dinner on the table that looks
Mhm,
immaculate every single time because Bill cares. That's the point.
right.
Um and
And I
it
think,
certainly could have worked if it was a woman that Bill had met, but it wouldn't make sense in the game with if you're following the game because we already know that there is a Frank corpse hanging around someplace, and so we
But
have to tie that
I
in
mean,
somehow.
it could have been two friends, though. I mean, if you think about Shawshank,
yeah,
that's a
That's
love
true.
story between two platonic
They had a bromance,
romance. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm glad they did what they did. I don't feel like there was any. Yeah, I just feel
Well,
like it
I
was a
don't
good
think
choice.
that
But
there's anything like negative about it. Like I wasn't talking about it to say like anything negative about it. I thought it was a great touch. I thought it was like a great like garnish. Like it was awesome to put in this episode and make it a focal point.
so
Mm,
here's something that I think is, as I close out the episode, here's something that I definitely want to touch on real quick. Um, Episode 3 of The Last of Us is very unique when it comes to storytelling principles. It the flashback did not give us a lot of information about what happened during the 20-year period that the apocalypse has been going on, right? And it doesn't really give us even any glimpse into any of the really anything other than the fact that there are raiders. I mean, we don't really see anything that we didn't see in the first or the second episode. We don't see any new versions of the cordyceps. We don't get a feel that, like, some crazy thing was happening during the time. We don't see any reorganization of Fedra or the Fireflies or anything like that. What we get is a full picture of two people that live a lifetime within the apocalypse,
Right.
which is an important part, I think, of the storytelling in The Last of Us. There are many of these stories that happen in the lifetime of the apocalypse. And just because we don't know about them doesn't mean that they're not happening. So
Right.
this sort of sets up a background and again, to use the same word, a world building experience for us so that we understand that there is still hope out there, that there is still human goodness out there, that
Mhm.
not everything is negative and horrible and every person that you meet is probably going to try to kill you. I mean, that may be true, but we also know that the converse can be true too, which is you can meet people who can directly touch your heart and make you a better person for it too. And that, I think, is an essential aspect of The Last of Us altogether. It's all about what is in store. What's the hope? What do you keep going for? That's important. So, I really want to thank everybody for being a part of this episode. I'm so sorry that Josh couldn't be here, but I'm sure that, in the next episode, we'll give him a chance to kind of recap what he thought was important about episode 3. And on our next episode, we're going to talk about Joel and Ellie now firmly on the road and listening to Hank Williams and on their way to Kansas City. This is definitely an intersection in the game where some interesting things happen. A lot of divergence from the game in this episode, but lots of cool stuff happening too. And plenty of puns, so I'll be in my element.
Yay.
Thank you, Kinte, and thank you, Tori, for being here. Kinte, how can we find you on social media?
Kente F on Twitter and Kente Ferguson on Instagram.
All right. And Tori, how can we find you on social media?
You can find me at Tori Rush on Facebook and Rush Tori on Instagram.
Mhm.
Awesome. And you can find us next week on Thursday, same time, 8 o'clock Eastern, for the next episode of Talking The Last of Us, where we will go through episode 4. And again, just for anyone who doesn't know, this coming week, if you're listening to this in real time, episode 5 of The Last of Us will air on Friday so that it doesn't compete with the Super Bowl. So we'll get kind of an extra sneak peek, and I hear it's going to be crazy. So can't wait to see that, and I can't wait to talk about it. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Good night.
Good night.
Night.